Hey everyone, and welcome to The Bottom Line. I'm your host, Lauren Kalil. On today's show, we have our sports analysts, Brian Friend and Patrick Clark. They're giving us their top teams to have your eye on as we enter the 2022 season. We don't have a full list of the rosters quite yet. It is still early, but over the next several weeks, we're going to be looking at some of those teams that could be dominant and jumping into the mix. But first, one of the teams that we've been talking about for a couple of weeks now, Patrick, you were recently in Iceland checking out Annie's team. She's out there with her team getting ready. What was the training like so far?
It was intense. Yami has really got that collection of just top level athletes really firing in all cylinders right now. They do like 2 sessions a day, and they're hard sessions. And obviously, you're talking about Tola, who's known for his lifting, just being super strong. Then you have someone like Khan, who's known for his engine and just ability to go in that pain cave. Then you have Lauren. Lauren's kind of like a jack of all trades. Lauren Fisher is, and then you have Annie, Annie is obviously 2-time games champion. Coming off a great individual year, and just seeing them mesh together. That's what I really want to see, how they work together. And they communicate very well. They practice with the worm a lot. It was great watching them. They have a lot of experience on team. Obviously, Tola's made it to the games plenty of times. I believe 3 times on a team. Lauren finished 3rd in 2019 on a team, and then Khan was he's competed on a team and as an individual. Actually, competed on a team in 2019. So they have all that team experience, where it's Annie who doesn't have the team experience, but she's kind of captaining that team. It's a great environment, great training environment, obviously high class athletes, and they're meshing really well despite different skill levels and personalities. And I think Brian's going to talk about this as Mayhem, but this could be a team that will give Mayhem some fits. And they could win some events where Mayhem typically sweeps events like they did this past year at the games, where I don't know how many events they won, or at least 10, it seemed like. But this is a team that could probably take some of those wins and finish top 5 consistently.
And it's not just, I don't think it's just them over there. Like Katrin's over there, BKG's been over there. There are other athletes that are they incorporating them into their training at all?
Yeah, so I think the morning session, they typically do basically like individual workouts, where it's more like they're weightlifting or a mono piece, and then the afternoon, they'll do. I think they alternate between like doing individual like metcons, and then they'll alternate, and then they'll do something team while they do something individual. And obviously, Frederick is kind of helping them out, and also doing the open as well. But I think it's kind of giving Yami an ability to kind of watch both. This is obviously these are a lot of high class, top tier podium contending athletes that Yami has his hands full, and he can't watch all of them, especially if they're all training at the same time. But having someone like Frederick there is helping out, and Frederick has obviously a lot of experience competing at the games, and he's been really helpful. But yeah, it's a really cool environment. Obviously, talking to Tola and Khan, they're just blown away by how great of an athlete that Katrin and BKG are, and they train alongside of them, especially when it comes to like individual strength sessions or some metcons. But they've been holding their own against BKG and Katrin, so it's pretty cool to watch.
And I think that's one of the interesting things is last year, one of the biggest topics, and I feel like basically every year, is who can give Mayhem a run for their money. When you look at a team like Annie's team that's forming over there and then training with BKG and people like Katrin, it's like they have their own environment that's so competitive. But Brian, speaking of Mayhem freedom, could anybody give them a run for their money, especially when we're looking at they've developed 4 teams just out of Mayhem this year?
Yeah, and they'll have 4 teams fielded this year. All 4 of the teams are good in their own regard, but there's only one Mayhem Freedom, and that's the team to beat regardless. And with the addition of Sam Cornwallet on that team, we've seen that Rich has the capacity to bring in basically anyone and have them be effective in that team setting. When you're now talking about bringing in someone who's that good already individually, and is very motivated. Anytime you listen to him talk, regardless of what the topic is, he's very focused and driven. I think he's going to mesh really well with just the mindsets of someone like Andrew and Taylor, Andrew Nissler and Taylor Williamson. So I think they all have a very common goal. I think that they are very set on winning this championship this year. I mean, even if you watch the documentary they released or just recently about last year, like they very much are aware that if Rich is able to win this one, this will be 10 championships that he's been a part of between individual and team. And that's obviously a tremendous feat for any athlete in any sport. So I think they're the team to beat without a doubt. And the landscape for teams this year is impressive, but certainly Reykjavik's I think is at the top of the list, along with probably one or two other teams that can, if someone can do it, that those are there's only a couple teams that have a chance. As far as the other three teams from Mayhem go, it's been a while since Mayhem Independence has showed up on the leaderboard, but last time they competed, they got fourth at the games, and the roster is completely different. I don't know that they necessarily have even the team experience of a Reykjavik. Angelo doesn't have any real team experience. Luke Parker doesn't have any real team experience. Sasha Nieves, no team experience. Alexis Johnson does, and she's probably kind of from a mental perspective and a teamwork perspective, the voice of reason there, and the one who can kind of teach those people throughout the season. But she doesn't even necessarily have to that much, because presumably they're training with Rich, who's amongst, if not the best team athlete we've ever had. So they have that added bonus that even though he's not on their team, they're still within his training camp and environment. So they're always learning from him. And the same can be said for the other team that's training there, Mayhem Justice, which will probably build as their fourth team. But this team is pretty good too. Jessica Kalagian competed at semifinals last year. Ben Davidson barely missed it. Aniston is one of the coaches there at Mayhem. And apparently this guy, Seth Stovall, he's pretty young, but he looks like a beast to me. So I think that they will have a good chance to make the games. And then if they can make the games, then I think that they'll probably field four teams, because the Mayhem Libertad team down in South America is probably the favorites in that region or continent. And if they do that, they'll have 10% of the games field, which is pretty cool.
Wow, that is pretty impressive.
Brian, what do you think the odds are of that Independence team making a podium or shot or even a top five?
Yeah, I think that we're going to talk about some other teams here in a minute. I think it's going to be actually pretty tough to podium at the games this year for them. Not just for them, but for almost any team. I think there are basically three teams in the way, and we've talked about two of them already, in Mayhem Freedom and Reykjavik. And then Oslo's the third one, which I think Patrick's going to talk about. And if you want to get on the podium, I kind of view it as the same way as the men's podium. Like, there's a handful of guys that if you want to achieve that, you have to beat one of them, and that's not an easy task.
And that brings us to, Patrick, leading into this season, not knowing the full landscape of exactly which teams are going to come out after the Open. We're still early in the season, but who would be your top picks for people to watch going into this season?
Well, outside of obviously the Reykjavik and the Mayhem teams, you have to go with the second place team in Oslo. And the reason why is those two women. There's a lot of conversation. In order to have a successful team, you got to have strong women. And Oslo has those, and they proved it last year. But obviously with Lena Rector and Ingrid, and they won down at Wadapalooza with Kristen Holtis. So they went head to head with Taylor and Andrea, and they beat them. They beat them in quite a few workouts, and they won overall. So that's obviously the team that you expect to be on the podium. Now the other two people, Nikolai Biladal, is that how you pronounce it, Brian? And then Even Ringard. Those are their males, and Nikolai, he actually competed as an individual back in 2019, finished 40th, and then even he was on the team last year, and that was a team that they took to IF3, and they actually won the IF3. So they've been working with each other for a while. And then also you throw in the factor that Holta is their coach, and she's dedicated. She's obviously we see what she's doing in the Open, but she's dedicated to just coaching that team. So all her time and energy is going right into that team and the Topple Rich and the Mayhem crew. So that's definitely one of the teams I'm looking at. My second team would probably be Move Fast, Live Heavy, Christian Harris's team. Obviously, we know what happened last year. One of their athletes tested positive for a banned substance, and they had to withdraw. They finished second at the Granite Games, but I thought that's the type of team last year, especially with the experience of Will and Christian, that would have did really well in the games in the format, especially with the odd objects and some of the other events that they program. but unfortunately, we didn't see that. So this year he reloaded. He brought in two really good underrated females, Nicole Soto and Winter Nicolette, and they both made it to the MAC as individuals. Winter actually finished 11th in that stack MAC field, and as an individual, she actually finished second. And not a lot of people know that she's really strong. She actually finished second in the snatch event, and ahead of Tia. Obviously, Tia missed her last lift, but she finished second in that event with a snatch of 205 pounds. And then Nicole Soto, she actually has some games experience in 2017 when she was with CrossFit Queens. She was a member of that team, and she's got a really good engine. And I really like that team. Obviously, with the leadership of someone like Christian Harris, and you got a cool name like Move Fast, Lift Heavy. How do you not choose a team like that?
Brian, which teams are you going to keep your eye on going into the season with what we know so far?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with one kind of a proven and established team, and then another team that's a new team this year, of which there are actually many, and I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk about a lot of others throughout the season. But last year, CrossFit Pro 1 out of Montreal placed 5th at the games. They're bringing back half of their roster. So Chloe Galvin-David is probably the name that most people will recognize there after she made the games in 2018 out of the East Regional. And Frederick Dubé, they're coming back. They have a big roster. If you click on their team, it'll show a ton of people that can contribute scores in the open. They'll narrow that down. They've added Maud Riopel and Jeremy Langto, so I think those are the 4 that will ultimately be competing for them if they're all healthy enough. And I think this is a team that has just like that team mindset, team culture as a part of their history and box. And you see, this is pretty regular. And actually with the return of the Affiliate Cup, I think we'll see other teams like this that we've seen throughout history that are just always reloading and looking to improve. But they'll feel like they are very confident. I spoke to them before the couple articles I wrote about the teams to watch this season, and they think that they can actually improve upon their 5th place performance last year, despite maybe the changing team landscape. So I think they'll definitely be in the mix. And then there was a new team that popped up a couple of weeks before the Open that I came across. I think they're listed as CrossFit OBA, which stands for Open Box Athletics. They were 9th week 1 of the Open, and they have Joey Tortora, Nick Hecht, Kelsey Keel, and Ashley Wozni. All of these athletes have some experience, not necessarily on the same team, but at various teams and some individual accolades for each of them. And I think that, just when you have people that have the desire to compete on a team and the understanding of what it means to be part of a team that are also just individually talented, it's not the same level of athlete necessarily as a Reykjavik, but I think that this is a new team in the team division this year that can make a top 10 run at the games.
And Patrick, what would you say is the bottom line when it comes to the teams that we know in the landscape so far?
My bottom line is, can any of these teams stop Rich from retiring this year? I mean, he's made it known. He's made it known that this potentially could be, and my conversations with him, this is probably his last year, and he wants to end with 10.
Yeah.
But if you know Rich, he's if he doesn't win it, he's coming back for another one. So will any of these teams stop Rich from retiring?
Brian, what's your bottom line?
I think it's, how exciting can the team competition be and how deep can it be? And I think that this is a season that we have an opportunity to see somewhere between 10 and 20 teams that are very formidable and that given a really good execution or maybe even just combination of workouts or movement patterns over the weekend at the CrossFit Games can be contenders, whether it's the podium, the top 5, the top 10. And it's a super international field. We only spoke about a couple teams, but there are plenty of others across Europe and Australia in particular that will be very, very relevant. I look forward to highlighting more of them throughout the year. But bottom line, I think the Affiliate Cup is going to be exciting this year and very competitive.
Certainly something that we're excited to watch and see any other teams popping up. Patrick Clark, Brian Friend, thank you for joining us for another episode of The Bottom Line, and we'll see you next time.